It's Floss the Fangirl and it's time for Floss Reviews, and today's book is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. This is a contemporary young adult fiction. It came out 3 years ago, and there is a sequel which I haven't read. The story is about LARA JEAN SONG and her two sisters. They live at home with their father. LARA JEAN is 16, turning 17, and her older sister Margot is moving away to Scotland for university. And it's sort of the first time the family is being split apart. Their mother died when they were younger, and so they've been a really tight-knit family for a long time since. Their next door neighbour is also Margot's boyfriend, Josh, but unbeknownst to Margot and basically anyone else, LARA JEAN was in... I keep on calling her LARA JEAN. It's LARA JEAN, but all through the book, I called her in my head LARA JEAN. Don't know why. So if I do it through the video, I'm sorry. It's LARA JEAN SONG. I keep calling her LARA JEAN. Stop it. Josh is the boyfriend, but Lara's crush has been, and Lara actually liked him beforehand. The crux of the book is that LARA JEAN has written 5 letters to boys that she at some point in her life has loved, or in her mind loved. She doesn't send them, of course. This is just her way to kind of say goodbye and get them out of her brain and move on. What happens one day is the letters are accidentally sent to these 5 different men. Whoa. Of course, these men have no idea she ever felt this way or did feel this way. A lot of them have no idea who she is. Well, not a lot of them. The 5 of them have varying ideas of who she is and her crushes. Some of them are quite infantile, and the more recent ones tend to be quite a bit more grown up. The book itself was actually, I really enjoyed it. I say that with a hitch in it, in that it took me a while to get into it. I found LARA JEAN, I keep thinking about it, to be quite infantile at times. It's just a personal pet peeve, but I hate people calling their fathers daddy. It's just, there's an ick factor to it. I don't like it. That's just my business though, so I just, every time she talked about her daddy, I was just like, eh. But even in her other behaviour, I found her to be quite juvenile. She, the language itself throughout the whole book is short sentences, not too descriptive, very, this is what happens next, this is what happens next. And I don't know if that was deliberate, but I felt it probably was deliberate the longer I went into it, because it paid off in a way in terms of the character is actually accused of being quite juvenile about her views on the world and the way that she sees relationships, and her wanting to fantasize in a very not princessy, but in a very, juvenile romantic way, understanding the complexities of relationships versus what she dreamed and hoped for. And I think that probably is a deliberate choice, because in the beginning of the book, it's something that annoyed me. LARA JEAN was just incredibly, for a 16, 17-year-old girl, I was just like, grow up already. I can understand why she hadn't. There are other parts of the book I did love in terms of the way that she interacted with her sister, as one of 3 girls myself. Sisters have an incredibly complex relationship with each other. You can love and hate each other at exactly the same time. You can say things that you can never say to somebody else, and you are allowed to because you're a sister and they'll forgive you. It's a really weirdly deep bond. Relationships with the 2 men who are sort of the triangle of the book. Peter Kavinsky is sort of this player boy. She had a crush on him when he was a bit younger, and they actually shared a kiss at a party when they were about 13, 14. And she sort of briefly loved him. To have a fake relationship to convince both Peter and LARA JEAN decided to have a fake relationship to convince his very ex-girlfriend that he's over her, and LARA JEAN's real crush, Josh, aka Margot's very recent ex-boyfriend, that she's not in love with him because he also received a letter. Of course, fake relationships always lead to complications. So the book follows the sort of almost a year in, 6 months-ish in LARA JEAN's life. And as I said, it starts off quite, not slow, but it starts off young. I was sort of halfway through thinking this is very much a teen book, and that while I was enjoying it, I wasn't challenged by it. I kind of was just, it was just an enjoyable book, and I was enjoying the story, but not thinking, God, I'm dying to know what happens in book 2, which I already knew was out there. However, and around the midway mark, it started to pick up the pace in terms of the plot itself, but also Lara Jean's awareness of her own life and how she was interacting with the people. She was realising her flaws as opposed to just thinking she was 100% right, which is a little bit infuriating. The complexness of the relationship she was having was growing, which I was enjoying, and how she sort of tried to solve problems and stand up for herself made me proud of her. She grew up, basically. I think this book did quite well towards the end was tackle the topic of boys versus girls and how they're discussed and how they talk about themselves and to each other. There is an issue that arises, which don't message during my filming, come on. There is an issue that arises during Lara Jean's developing relationship with, I won't say who, but how she deals with it and how people around her deal with it is quite an interesting and very current topic of gender and also relationships in terms of how people are treated by their actions based on their gender. So while again it was done in a very kind of not literally, but literal and simplistic way almost, I think that was good. I think it had to be just kind of, this is what happens and this was the fallout from it. And Lara Jean explores her emotions very matter-of-factly. And I think for younger readers too, this is an important thing because sometimes YA can get too complex for its own good. So while I necessarily didn't love the simplicity to it, I can understand for a young teen reader, like I'm talking young, this could be good. This could be a way into understanding that. But that's a whole other minefield of adults reading YA and then teens reading YA and how we both interpret them. I'm not going to dig that one up today. We'll talk about that another time. On a really, really shallow level, I loved the cover. I think it's a beautiful cover in terms of, it's just a great look. It just, yeah. And I know I've seen people be critical that this is not the character of Lara Jean in the book, in that she is a bit different, which I get, but I think it captures for me the spirit of it or what's going on, but also I just think I love the fonting. I like covers. There's nothing wrong with saying I like covers. I read the book inside too and don't judge the two together really. But this cover made me want to read this book before anything else, before I heard about it. I saw it on Instagram and it jumped to me for that reason. So, honest, I took it for a cover. I ain't ashamed, I'll say it. But if you'd like an easy to get through, building in complexity, YA, romantic, contemporary, please read To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han.